Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. As soon as I walked into the house, it was immediately clear that something was wrong. Harper stood awkwardly in the living room, nervously shifting from foot to foot, her hands tightly clasped together. 30 years of marriage had taught me to read her like an open book, and today her behavior was far from normal. She had returned from her dentist appointment a little earlier than I did, as usual. Usually, by the time I got home, Harper had already changed clothes and started preparing dinner. But today the kitchen was quiet. No smell of food, no signs of her usual evening routine. She was still in the same clothes she'd worn to work that morning. When her behavior changes, it's a sure sign that something is brewing. "Mason, we need to talk," she said, her voice tense with anxiety. I quietly sat down and gently responded, "Of course, dear." Now it was her turn to speak. "What's going on?" I asked cautiously. Harper hesitated for a moment, clearly searching for the right words. "This isn't easy to say," she began, her voice becoming more confident. "I want to separate, maybe even divorce." Her voice was gaining momentum. "I think a temporary separation is the best way to start, but I have to be honest. This might lead to a permanent break." "All right," I calmly replied. "I'll leave right now." I stood up and headed to our bedroom, catching Harper's gaze, a mix of confusion and disbelief. She clearly hadn't expected me to agree so easily. One of the hallmarks of our marriage had always been my ability to react in ways that surprised her. Harper was predictable. I was not. If my calm response had stunned her, what I did next left her completely speechless. Less than a minute later, I returned to the living room with 2 fully packed suitcases and placed them by the door. I pulled a small slip of paper from my pocket and handed it to her. "Here's where I'll be staying," I said, "and my new phone number. You can still reach me on my cell." I added one final condition. "There's just one thing you need to know. If you start seeing someone else, then we're done. This won't just be a separation, it'll be a divorce. But if you just need time to figure out your feelings, we can talk about coming back together when you've sorted it out. I won't tolerate being strung along while you explore other options only to return when it suits you." Before Harper could gather her thoughts, I pulled out my phone and dialed a number. "Hi, Isabella. It's Mason. How about dinner on Friday night?" I asked. Her response was immediate and playful. "You already know the answer. I'll be there, probably without underwear," she teased. Smiling, I ended the call, grabbed my suitcases, and headed for the door. Harper stood frozen, watching me calmly walk to the car. That evening, Isabella and I had a simple steak dinner, nothing fancy, but pleasant enough. Eventually, we ended up at my apartment, where she brought me to the height of pleasure, just as the phone on the nightstand rang. Still wrapped around me, Isabella answered it. "Hello?" she responded, slightly breathless. "Harper?" she asked with a smirk. "He's a little busy right now. I'll have him call you back later. Give him a little time to finish up. I think he'll be free in about half an hour, maybe longer if we're having a good time," she added with a laugh, then hung up. Turning to me, she started moving faster again, laughing. "Wow, I never thought talking to someone's wife while I'm with her husband could be so much fun." We climaxed together, and after catching my breath, I picked up the phone. I dialed the familiar number that had been mine for so many years until today. Harper answered before the call could go to voicemail. "Mason, is that you?" "Yes, it's me," I replied, barely holding back the satisfaction in my voice. "Sorry I missed your call earlier. I was a little preoccupied. But now I'm free and calling you back." "Mason, what the hell is going on?" Harper's voice trembled, struggling to comprehend what was happening. "You had everything prepared in advance, bags packed, a new place ready, even before I mentioned the possibility of living apart. And then, when I tried to call to discuss everything, another woman answered your phone. She practically admitted that she was with you. I wasn't going to be caught off guard when you announced the breakup." Surprisingly, the blow I received just a few minutes ago wasn't as strong as I expected. Isabella wasn't the type to make a scene, at least, That's the impression I had. I couldn't help but smirk, lazily running my fingers along the smooth line of her skin. If this was crucial to deciding whether Harper and I could rebuild our relationship, maybe it was worth discussing. But my thoughts were cut short by Harper's sharp voice slicing through the air. "You're a liar. You promised we wouldn't sleep with other people while we were on a break, Dot. It was just supposed to be a time for reflection." I looked at her without showing emotion. "That's not exactly what I said, Harper. I said that if you slept with someone else, it would guarantee a divorce. I never promised anything about myself." Her voice flared with anger. "You're unbearable. How can you think the rules don't apply to you? If you can sleep with anyone you want, then so can I. What's fair for one should be fair for the other, right?" I remained calm. "Of course, Harper. You can do whatever you want. But if you do, it's over between us. I won't stay if you make a fool of me. By your logic, we should end everything right now because you've already crossed the line. Maybe we should start the divorce process on Monday morning," she threw back sarcastically. "Isn't that fair?" "Not exactly," I replied calmly. "You were the one who asked for the separation, not me. I didn't sign up for this. You're the one who cut off our relationship, our physical connection, without even asking me. You had a choice, Harper. That's the difference. And don't forget, I made it clear from the start. If you sleep with someone else, we're done. You never said anything about me." I paused, letting the tension hang in the air before continuing. "But if you've made up your mind about divorce, then go ahead and file. It's your decision." Her tone softened slightly, uncertainty creeping into her voice. "I don't know if I want a divorce, Mason," she admitted. "I just needed space, time to think. I only asked for a separation." I shrugged, staying indifferent. "Then there's no problem. You got your separation." "But now you're sleeping with someone else," she countered, feeling her frustration rise again. "And if I do the same, you'll leave me. That's not fair." "Not fair?" I echoed, my voice growing harder. "I didn't ask for this separation, Harper. I didn't want any of this. I wanted us, our life, our marriage. You were the one who decided to tear it apart. And now you expect me to sit around without any intimacy while you figure things out? That's not going to happen." I leaned back, adding sarcastically, "If it makes you feel better, you can come over 3 or 4 times a week and we can still sleep together." Her face twisted in disbelief. "What kind of separation is that? No one does that. The whole point of a separation is to create distance. You just don't get it." "I didn't get a manual on how separations work, Harper," I snapped. "But if you show up here and expect everything to fall back into place, don't think I'm going to hold back. I'm done playing by rules that only apply to me. Our marriage did that for far too long. Now I'm finally doing what I want, and I'm not giving that up." I leaned in closer, lowering my voice to a whisper. "So if you do show up, be prepared for what happens. Don't expect to just lie there like nothing has changed. Either show your best, or don't come at all." Harper's voice trembled, her shock displacing her anger. "What's happened to you? All I wanted was a little time to figure out if we could still save our relationship. And now, just a few hours later, you've become someone I no longer recognize. I can't shake the feeling that you've been deceiving me for years, acting in the shadows while I remained completely unaware. That's absurd. I have never betrayed you and never even thought about leaving. All I've ever done is try to find a way back to myself, and that path led me to another woman." "We'll talk tomorrow," I said, abruptly ending the conversation. "Unbelievable." Isabella quietly laughed. "That conversation was surprisingly captivating. You really stood your ground against your wife? Did she just call me a scoundrel? I've always been cautious. It's been instinctual for me. It's what helped me avoid the pitfalls of life, unlike many others. But Harper, my wife, is the complete opposite. She rarely notices anything unless it's right in front of her." Harper was constantly talking about the new dentist at her clinic. This man, knee-deep in a divorce, described his soon-to-be ex-wife as deceitful and unfaithful, but to Harper, he was nothing less than a hero. Then suddenly, a few weeks ago, her endless chatter about him stopped. Every time I tried to bring him up, she dodged the topic. It was as if this man had just vanished without a trace. That sudden silence intrigued me far more than her endless conversations. So I took matters into my own hands. I tapped her phone, recorded her conversations, forwarded her emails to myself. I even hired a private detective. What I discovered was exactly what I suspected, a meticulously planned seduction. Dr. Smith, the charming dentist, had a clear plan to get close to Harper. His divorce? A repeat of what had happened at his previous workplace. There were already rumors of unethical behavior from former patients. This guy was a slimeball. But to Harper's credit, she hadn't given in. Yet. She hadn't crossed the line into infidelity or destroyed our marriage. But Smith was slowly getting into her head, convincing her that separating from me wasn't a betrayal, that they could be together without crossing that final line. That's when I drew my line. If she wanted to stay in this marriage, she would have to keep her hands, and his, to herself. Isabella had recently joined our office, and we immediately hit it off. A widow, she had moved here to be closer to her daughter and grandchildren. When I told her what was going on with Harper and how I was planning to push her into an honest conversation, Isabella didn't hesitate to offer herself as the other woman. Monitoring Harper's messages, I knew she was planning to ask for a trial separation on Friday. That gave me time to come home at lunch, pack my things, and leave. I moved in with Isabella. She had 2 months left on her rental contract. From a distance, I continued keeping tabs on Harper. If she made even one wrong move toward Smith, I was ready to cut her off completely. Despite all of this, my loyalty remained steadfast. To Harper, to our children. Our son and daughter had already graduated from nearby universities and were building successful careers in neighboring states. I wasn't going to become an unfaithful husband or a serial dater. If Harper wanted to keep me, she'd have to fight for it. I wasn't going to beg her for love or affection, and even if we found a way to reconcile, it would never be the same. I wanted more from this marriage, more than just the occasional obligatory touch. I needed someone who was willing to meet me halfway, someone who wasn't afraid to break out of the usual boundaries. I was tired of living like a monk. After dropping Isabella off at the airport, I returned to the apartment and heard a knock at the door. To my surprise, Harper was standing there, her eyes filled with tears. I let her in, led her to the couch, and sat down beside her, patiently waiting for her to find the right words. After a long silence, she finally found the strength to speak, her voice weighed down by the burden she had carried for too long. "Mason, I've been such a fool," she began quietly. "I'm sure this won't surprise you, but for the last few weeks, Dr. Smith has been trying to get close to me. Strangely enough, you understand me better than I do myself. He convinced me to ask for a temporary separation so we could be together." Harper's voice was filled with deep regret as she confessed. "He said that if we were officially separated, it wouldn't be considered cheating, and that you would treat me better when I came back. But I was completely wrong. You were ready to leave for good, your bags were packed, you had a new place, and even someone else was already waiting for you." She paused, her voice trembling as she continued. "And I thought I had a clever plan. Now I can't even fully grasp what I was trying to do. I had been plotting for so long, but I should have realized that you were one step ahead. When I called you that Friday night and a woman answered, almost admitting she was with you, I nearly collapsed. And when you called back, everything became clear. You really were with her." Tears welled up in Harper's eyes as she struggled with her words. "It hurts so much, Mason. I've been replaying everything you said over and over in my mind all weekend. Slowly, I came to realize you were right. I was the one who wanted the separation, not you." Her voice softened as she confessed, "My plan was to have some fun with Oliver Smith, then come back to you, thinking you'd never know. It was a terrible, selfish scheme. But you, Mason, you saw right through me from the start. You turned it all against me. Now you're the one who's been making love outside of our marriage without any guilt. If I had gone further and slept with Oliver, I would have ruined everything." She paused, reflecting on her actions before continuing. "After hours of self-pity, yelling at myself and wallowing in misery, it finally hit me. I understood what I'd been doing to us, what I had been doing to you, and I saw how quickly and decisively you acted in response to my selfish, thoughtless behavior. You won, Mason, and I deserved it. This morning I told Dr. Smith that he had crossed a line, she said, her voice more confident now. And what? You just turned him away and now you want me to act like nothing happened? I asked, disbelief clear in my voice. I'm just supposed to forget that you almost destroyed our marriage because of that scumbag? That you put me through hell because some guy wanted to sleep with you? Harper, you're a beautiful woman, and men will always be interested in you. Am I supposed to live in fear that this could happen again with the next one who pays you attention? No, Mason, that's not it, she whispered. And I wasn't the one who turned Smith away today. When he showed up at work, the police were already waiting for him in the parking lot. He was arrested. It turns out he's been accused of harassment. One of our patients, Mrs. Garcia, accused him of making advances on her while she was under anesthesia. And after that, other women started coming forward with similar accusations. He's a terrible person, Harper said with a bitter, grim smile. That's the man I almost destroyed everything for, Mason. I'm not surprised, Harper. I always had a feeling he was a predator, a man without morals. But now that he's gone, do you think we can just move on? I asked, the sharpness in my voice returning. No, Mason, she replied slowly, carefully choosing her words. I was hoping you would keep your promise, that you weren't lying when you made it. I've never lied to you, Harper, and I've always tried to keep my word. But what promise are you talking about? I asked, genuinely puzzled by her sudden change in tone. You said I could come to you 3 or 4 times a week. You said it would save you from having to convince other women to stay with you. Don't you remember? Harper asked, her eyes searching mine for acknowledgement. Yes, I remember now, I said, recalling that conversation. But I also said I wasn't going back to the way things were. I think I understand now, Mason, she whispered, her voice quiet but full of realization. Mason, help me understand better. Harper's voice softened as she spoke. I need you to promise me something in return. No more meetings with her, or with any other woman for that matter. By now, Isabella was likely high above the clouds and had no intention of coming back. As for me, no other woman even crossed my mind. Harper was the one I wanted, and my feelings for her were unmistakable, but I wasn't going to go back to her. She was going to cheat on me, and I couldn't forgive that. Go to hell, Harper. You're a lying cheater. I can never trust you, and besides, I don't believe you didn't cheat on me with that doctor. Goodbye. I swear I didn't cheat on you, she said with conviction. I don't believe you. You made your choice. You wanted freedom and now you have it. Enjoy it. I ended the relationship and I was moving on, perhaps even with Isabella. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel.